Okay, real talk. There is a sultanate, an actual, functioning, hereditary monarchy that has been continuously operating since 1405. It has survived the Spanish Empire, the Dutch, the British, the Americans, 2 world wars, and it is still, right now, issuing royal decrees from an island in the southern Philippines that most people couldn't find on a map. And get this, in 2013, it nearly triggered an international war between the Philippines and Malaysia over a land claim that is 600 years old. 600 years old. This is the story of Jolo and the Sulu Sultanate. Here's what you probably think you know about Jolo. Danger, conflict, kidnappings. And yeah, we are absolutely going to talk about all of that. But here's what I guarantee you don't know. The Sulu Sultanate was, at its peak, one of the wealthiest and most strategically important maritime empires in all of Asia. Not just Southeast Asia, all of Asia. Chinese emperors wanted their trade, Spanish viceroys feared their fleets, and the British actually signed a formal treaty with them and paid them annual money for the right to use their land. And they are still waiting for that payment today. I am not kidding. By the end of this video, you are going to know why the British North Borneo Company signed a deal with the Sultan of Sulu in 1878, and why that deal is the reason the Philippines and Malaysia nearly went to war in 2013. You're going to know about Sulu war fleets so large that the Spanish called them armadas. You're going to hear about a massacre so brutal it ended an entire chapter of Sulu history and made headlines around the world in 1906. And you're going to understand why a 600-year-old sultanate still matters, right now, today, in ways that reshape how we understand Southeast Asian geopolitics. Let's go. All right, let's go back to the very beginning. The year is 1405. A man named Sharif ul-Hashim arrives on Jolo Island. He comes from the Hadramaut region of Yemen, or possibly Sumatra. Historians debate this. And he is a Muslim missionary scholar. He marries a local princess named Paramasuli. He converts the local chieftains to Islam, and he is proclaimed the first Sultan of Sulu. His full title? Sultan Sharif ul-Hashim I. And the line of succession from that moment, 1405, has never been broken. The Sultanate of Sulu is one of the oldest continuously operating monarchies in Asia. Let that sink in for a second. Now, what happened next is remarkable, because within a century of that first sultan setting foot on Jolo, the Sultanate of Sulu had expanded into something genuinely extraordinary. They controlled the entire Sulu Archipelago, which is a chain of islands stretching from Mindanao almost all the way to Borneo. They established tributary relationships with local rulers across what is now eastern Malaysia, southern Philippines, and even parts of northern Indonesia. Their war fleets, called Lenongs and Garai, were among the fastest and most maneuverable vessels in Asian waters. And their merchants traded pearls, sea cucumbers, beeswax, and exotic birds with the Chinese, the Javanese, and the Malay courts at Malacca. And just like Basilan, remember Basilan? The Sulu Sultanate had a deep, documented relationship with China. In 1417, 3 delegations from Sulu sailed to China simultaneously. 3 at the same time. The rulers of the Eastern, Western, and Peel, that's P-E-A-L, kingdoms of Sulu, all arrived at the Ming imperial court with their families and hundreds of followers. The Yongli Emperor, the same emperor who was commissioning Zheng He's famous treasure fleet voyages, received them with full imperial honors. And just like Prince Ipenton of Basilan, 2 of these Sulu rulers died in China before they could go home. Their tombs are still there, in Dezhou and Quanzhou, China, official Chinese historical sites, maintained to this day. Okay, now the Spanish show up, and this is where things get truly wild. Because, and I cannot stress this enough, the Spanish tried everything with Jolo. They sent missionaries, blocked. They sent diplomats, rejected. They sent war fleets, defeated. In 1578, the Spanish launched a full-scale naval invasion of Jolo with a fleet of warships and thousands of soldiers. They burned the main settlement. They thought they'd won. And then, the Tausugs rebuilt, faster than the Spanish could manage. And then, and this is the part that really gets me, the Tausugs went on offense. They launched counter-raids up the entire Philippine archipelago. We're talking raids on Manila, on Cebu, on the Visayas, year after year, decade after decade, for over 200 years. All right, pause. I want to know something, because I've asked people this and the answers genuinely surprise me. Drop in the comments right now. Before watching this video, had you ever heard of the Sulu Sultanate? Like, did you know this empire existed? Yes or no? I am telling you, the percentage of people who say no is staggering. Drop it below. I'll reply. Let's go. So by the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, one of the most powerful corporations in history, has arrived in Southeast Asia and is basically trying to take over everything. And the Sulu Sultanate? They weren't having it. The Dutch attempted to muscle in on Sulu's trading networks, specifically the slave trade and the spice feeder routes, and the Sulus pushed back hard enough that the VOC eventually decided the relationship wasn't worth the constant warfare. They backed off. A trading empire that conquered most of maritime Southeast Asia essentially decided that Jolo was more trouble than it was worth. That tells you everything about how formidable the Sultanate was at its peak. Now, here is the part that is still making news today. In 1878, Sultan Jamalul Alam of Sulu signed a deal with the British North Borneo Company. The Sultan agreed to lease, not sell, a large chunk of what is now the Malaysian state of Sabah to the British in exchange for an annual payment of 5,000 Malayan dollars. And the crucial word here is lease, because when the British left and Malaysia became independent, Malaysia kept Sabah. But the heirs of the Sultan of Sulu said, "Wait, you're still on our land. Where's our payment?" And Malaysia, to their credit or frustration, depending on your perspective, actually kept paying until 2013, when they stopped. Fast forward to February 2013. A group of about 200 armed followers of the Sultan of Sulu's heir, Raja Muda Agbimuddin Kiram, sailed from the Philippines and landed in Lahad Datu, Sabah, Malaysia. Their stated goal: to reassert the Sultanate's historical claim to the territory. What followed was a 54-day standoff that ended in armed clashes, deaths on both sides, and a massive diplomatic crisis between the Philippines and Malaysia. The heir, Jamalul Kiram III, who was conducting this operation from his home in Manila on dialysis, said, and this is a direct quote, "We would rather die than not pursue this claim." Malaysia called it an incursion. The Philippines called it a tragedy. The Sultanate called it a homecoming. Let's go back in time a bit though, because I skipped over something I really shouldn't have. The Spanish-Moro Wars. This isn't a little skirmish. This is a 300-year conflict, one of the longest military conflicts in Asian history, between the Spanish colonial government in Manila and the Muslim sultanates of Mindanao and Sulu. 300 years. The Spanish built a massive fortress in Zamboanga, Fort Pilar, specifically as a staging base against Jolo. The Tausugs built counterforts, counterfleets, counter-strategies. The Spanish conquered Manila in a week. They tried to conquer Jolo for 3 centuries and never fully did it. The Americans arrive after 1898 and immediately try something different. They sit down with the Sultan. In 1899, General John Bates of the U.S. Army signs the Bates Treaty with Sultan Jamalul Kiram II, basically acknowledging the Sultan's sovereignty over his people while establishing American administrative supremacy over the region. It was an honest attempt at a peaceful arrangement, and it lasted approximately 2 years. Because in 1900, the Americans unilaterally abrogated, canceled the treaty. They decided they didn't want to share authority with a sultan, and that decision led directly to one of the darkest chapters in American military history. Okay, what I'm about to tell you is one of the most disturbing events in American military history, and it barely gets a paragraph in most textbooks. In March 1906, hundreds of Tausug civilians, men, women, and children, took refuge in the crater of a dormant volcano called Bud Dajo on Jolo Island. They were Tausugs who refused to pay American-imposed taxes and refused to surrender their weapons. U.S. Army forces under Brigadier General Leonard Wood attacked the crater with artillery, rifles, and sustained assault. After several days of fighting, almost every person in that crater was killed. Estimates range from 600 to over 900 dead. When Mark Twain heard the official American military reports celebrating the battle, he wrote a scathing anti-war essay, calling it what it was. Here's something that genuinely stopped me when I found it. The Sultanate of Sulu, that 600-year-old monarchy, still exists. There is a sultan, right now, today. His name is Muedzul Lail Tan Kiram, and he holds the title of the 35th Sultan of Sulu. The Sultanate has no official governmental power in the Philippines or Malaysia, but it maintains cultural and religious authority over Tausug communities across the Sulu Archipelago. And in 2022, a European court in Luxembourg actually awarded the Kiram family 14.9 billion euros in arbitration over the Sabah lease dispute. The Philippines government moved to freeze that award. The legal battle is ongoing. A 600-year-old land lease is being argued in a Luxembourg courtroom in 2022. History doesn't end. It just changes arenas. And look, I want to do what we did with Basilan, because just like Basilan, Jolo is so much more than the conflict headlines. This island is stunning. Mount Tumantangus, whose name in Tausug literally means the mountain that weeps, is a dramatic volcanic peak that rises above jungle and coastal fishing villages. The waters around the Sulu Archipelago are among the most biodiverse marine environments on the planet. Dugongs still swim in these waters. Massive whale sharks pass through seasonally. The Tausug people, fierce, proud, deeply faithful, produce some of the most beautiful metal craft and wood carving in all of Southeast Asia. Their kris daggers are literally works of art. So let's bring this all the way home. In 1405, a scholar from Yemen set foot on a volcanic island in the southern Philippines and founded a kingdom. That kingdom became an empire. That empire resisted every colonial power that ever tried to destroy it. The Spanish failed. The Dutch backed down. The British cut deals. The Americans, even after Bud Dajo, never broke the cultural spine of the Tausug people. The Sultanate survived 2 world wars, the Cold War, the War on Terror, and is now arguing its land claims in European courts. And on the island of Jolo, right now, the same families who have been there for 6 centuries are still fishing the Sulu Sea, still crafting kris blades, still praying in mosques that face Mecca, still calling themselves Tausug, which, by the way, literally means people of the current, people of the sea current. They were named after water that never stops moving, and neither have they. The Sulu Sultanate, 600 years, still going, and we've barely scratched the surface, because connected to this entire story is one of the most astonishing treasure legends in Southeast Asia, the mystery of Yamashta's gold, which runs from Jolo all the way through Basilan and into the jungles of Mindanao. That is the next video. And if this video gave you something you didn't know before, share it, because stories like this deserve to be heard. I'll see you in the next one.